Elsie Kanza, the head of the World Economic Forum on Africa, has put a very bold vision out there. She wants to send an African girl in an Africa designed and made spaceship to Mars. Now, I would say that the locomotive at least is a step in the right direction and clearly speaks to beneficiation. Tami.
I think, we've been working very hard for many, many years. We've been an original equipment manufacturer or freight railroaders. And in the last about 7 years, we started working on our own IP when it comes to passenger coaches. So the Business Express that we saw yesterday, it's a product actually that we manufactured about 5 years ago, which is currently being used by our sister NGH Plaza. But it's still in pristine condition, as a lot of people thought that it just came out of production. It just goes to show the quality of the product. And to complete the suite of rolling stock products that we make, we've been working again for many, many years on designing our own locomotive. And our approach was to say we just don't want to be a locomotive integrator that will take systems from various entities and put them together. We started by getting our R&D teams to develop our own control system, which is the brains of the locomotive. That is now done, so we started then putting together a locomotive, which is what we finished last year. And we did the static tests. We've just finished dynamic testing, which is why we had the launch about a few weeks ago. So we're very, very excited. It's a locomotive that we've designed for the African markets. As you may be aware, that in most countries, there's still limitations on the tonnage per axle that is allowed on the networks.
Mohan, the biggest bottleneck, according to the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, is in the planning phase of the infrastructure projects that are being deployed across the African continent. Now, in terms of the DBSA, you have been funding the feasibility study for the North-South corridor. Perhaps you can give us an update on this very important infrastructure project for the continent.
From our side, we've made that realization in the last couple of years, putting quite a bit more funding towards those activities. And one specific example is our roughly $1 million funding that we provided for the pre-feasibility study for the North-South corridor. That was something, it was launched since, I know we got together last year even in Kigali, and the funding was only approved I think a month or so after that. And the work has been kicked off at the beginning of this year, and thanks to the very good work of the NAPAD Business Foundation as well, with their Afri-ID team, because they've also brought together all of these different railways. So it's not a Transnet-led initiative or a DBSA led one, it's not a South Africa-led one, but it's seen as a grouping of 6 different countries, 7 different entities from the SADC region coming together. And my understanding is that should, it's already seen some improvement on the operational basis, but also from a CapEx basis, because that's one of the ways we measure ourselves. We wanted to lead through to financing. We're looking at something in the region of $700 million of CapEx coming through down the line, maybe even as soon as 2018.
And Mohan, I think you touched on a very important point in that we are here to measure, to monitor, and to hold accountable for promises made in different forums, so hence the World Economic Forum on Africa in Kigali last year, and then track that progress from World Economic Forum to World Economic Forum. So it's great to get the development on the North-South corridor. Then from an IDC perspective, obviously infrastructure and infrastructure funding is very important to the development institution. What are you seeing from an execution perspective? And take the last 12 months, give us some tangibles. Again, it's about that measuring the performance of what is actually being executed.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and good morning, everybody. I think from an IDC, as you rightfully say, infrastructure is probably one of the most important funding aspects. It's even demonstrated by the largest capital allocation that we've made. It takes about 22% of the 100 billion we want.
20%.
23%.
23%, so almost a quarter.
Yes. Of the 100 billion that we've allocated that will plow in the economy in the next 5 years. So that for us, we think infrastructure is the enabler if we want to really industrialize South Africa and the rest of the region. So in terms of the last 12 months, I think we've seen a number of projects that needed IDC's support. Obviously, we cannot do it alone. I think we co-partner with DBSA and others in terms of leveraging. But what's important is that there has to be that perfect coordination. There has to be that common goal that we want to achieve, which then rapidly develop projects up to a point of bankability. So we've gotten involved in power projects in Nigeria to support one of the cement producers there. So we're looking at that, although that is possibly post-development. But on the other side, I think we've also taken cue of what has happened in terms of the renewable energy in South Africa. Now we're seeing a lot of developers, South African ones, which is a good thing, going outside South Africa. We're now supporting a project in Zimbabwe, a 15 megawatt solar project, 2 in Zambia. So IDC, we think also if we want to support the industrialization of South Africa, we have to get involved quite early on, because then you're able to influence certain decisions. And as a result, you can, once you've de-risked the project, almost wean yourself off and let others come in, and we've seen it in South Africa. We're also looking at, and this is obviously an old project in Senegal, airport terminal that IDC is part of. And through those projects, I think we take a lot of lessons, which then we look at how do we improve going forward. What is it? Because in South Africa, how we operate is totally different in other jurisdictions. So we take the lessons and we improve on other projects. We're also seeing in South Africa, I think it talks to inclusive growth, we actually partnered with Transnet through the private sector, bringing in black women in terms of rail branch line in Eastern Cape, which we all know what it will do to the Eastern Cape economy. So we're seeing a lot of involvement of black partners now in the technical environment, and that's a good sign from our side.
Let's continue with this theme of inclusive growth. Now, the World Bank has also put forward the stat that 20 million new jobs on an annual basis need to be created across the African continent until 2035 just to absorb new entrants into the labor force. 20 million jobs on an annual basis need to be created just to absorb the new entrants into the labor force. Sid, you mentioned skills transfer, you mentioned jobs growth. We've heard from Lizeka now what is happening in terms of driving that inclusive growth and really creating, I suppose, as part of the Black Industrialist program that the South African government is driving hard. Talk to me about jobs growth and what Transnet itself is doing to drive skills. And these are high-level skills across the African continent.
Yes, there's about 20 million entrants on the African continent that are coming through, a continent which is now more than 1 billion people. So it is to be expected that there will be that kind of number. And we are not creating jobs as fast as we need. For instance, as Transnet, we believe that the African continent needs to grow at an average of about 5.5% per annum in order for us to be able to have the kind of absorption capacity for these kinds of jobs. So in terms of our market demand strategy, which is an infrastructure-led growth strategy, we believe that we need to also stimulate, and I think it's important that we have DBSA and IDC in this discussion, because when we talk about the industrialization of the African continent, there's a lot that also drives on the funding of projects that have been identified, whether it's the North-South corridor, whether it's the Benguela corridor, or any of the 18 corridors that have been identified on the continent. There's lots of projects because Africa needs to play catch up. As you were saying, every year there's a 2% deficit in terms of the infrastructure requirements of the continent to enable us to catch up. So we are saying intra-African trade 17% in 2016. Is that enough? That's not enough. As Transnet, we then are saying, as we go into the continent, we take the core competencies that Transnet has and try to assist different countries in terms of saying how can we collaborate with them in terms of ports, rail, skills development and training, so that we can be able to begin to say how do we make sure that the rich mineral resources that the continent has can be moved from producers to where markets are. So that's really the trail that we're trying to lead. But also we will not have the funding as Transnet to do this alone. So we need a number of partners to take us on this.
So there, I'm going to throw it back to Mohan and to Lizeka to come in. Much is made about this term innovative financing solutions. Are they a reality, or is this a phrase that we've just concocted for platforms like the World Economic Forum?
I think they are a reality. In fact, they're a necessity. Without them, I don't think we're going to see any improvement in terms of development. So as the donor funding is drying up and as the host countries are battling or have competing needs, it's important that the state with the DFIs come together with the donor funding, cooperate and put in kind of blended finance, which is commercial as well as a grant type of blend. Now, I don't think we're at a point where we can say it's probably advanced, but I think us and the DBSA have just partnered. We're part of the STEP, which is a WEF initiative as well. I think we're serious about it, where even IDC with DBSA have seconded people to actually be part of this initiative. So we want to see it work. We need more leveraging. I agree that as Transnet navigates the region, they need to partner with ourselves, and we need to look at ways of unlocking the balance sheet, and I think there's many ways. And IDC with DBSA can definitely work together. We have to hunt impacts, I always say, if we want to make a success of what's happening in the region.
So it's all about collaboration. I want to come back to Mlamuli and talk about the smart ports in the context of the intra-Africa trade. The stat that Siya put on the table was 17%. That's where intra-Africa trade is sitting at 2016. It's not enough. You also said that we need 5.5% growth across the African continent to create jobs. The smart ports, in terms of boosting that regional integration, I mean, that's got to be the heart of what we can see tangible results coming from.
Absolutely. I think the connectivity between the African ports and even African cities, both land-based and seaborne trade, I think there's still a lot more that can be done. All seaborne trade, 100% of it, is not done by any of the African ships. So let's start there. So it is our cargoes amongst our countries, but none of us touches them at sea. So there is the seaborne side in terms of what we need to do strategically. And
so I need to focus on that for a moment to understand it. So there is no seaborne trade, intra-Africa trade, is that what you're saying?
It's there, it's not done by African ships.
Not done by African ships?
No, it's not. It's not. So what it means is those jobs at sea are not for Africans as we speak.
I think Lizeka said that we need to hunt in packs. So this is an African continent packs here. I'm coming back to you at this stage on the competitive issue and the fact that we need to readjust the baselines in many different arenas to become competitive.
Yeah, no, it's an important aspect because competitiveness is ultimately where we ought to be. I think as you listen to the panelists and you look at the myriad of challenges that we face, it's very clear that we need to readjust the baseline. We need to readjust the baseline in terms of saying, for instance, on the oceans economy. What is it that we're going to do if we don't have name flag ships in our own countries? I mean, Liberia, Monrovia used to be a big hub. Cape Town, South Africa used to be a big hub in terms of flag carriers, but they've disappeared. All the ships that you see now from Asia, the Americas, how do we readjust that? If you look at ship repair and dry docks, we used to employ more than 3,000 people in Durban alone in that industry, building ships. That has moved to Korea, it has moved to Europe, it is in Rotterdam, it is in Brussels, and also to parts of China. Reason being, you need to incentivize certain industries. If we are saying that our issue is around job creation, have we identified as Africa, where are those areas that we have a particular skill in, so that we can specialize in them, but also create the kind of jobs that we say we want to create? Because what seems to be happening is that instead of cooperation, there's a lot of competition on the continent. So as we re-baseline quite a number of things, we need to then begin to say which of the industries must we look at. On the funding issue, the Chinese are having a mail, and there was somebody yesterday who was saying to me, look, at the dinner table, if you're not having dinner, it means you're on the menu. So at the moment, the Chinese have come into the continent. They come with these blended finance solutions. So they look at projects, they bring in finance, and it's immediate. And then they can do these things. So that is why it's important Africa Inc., South Africa Inc. Begins to come together and say, let's come up with the solutions. We know what the problems are. We need to fast-track the development of solutions that will move. Gianni will tell you he's got a 20 to 22 billion rand pipeline of projects where he can build locomotives, he can provide wagons, he can provide coaches. But if he goes into a bid and is bidding with the Chinese, Gianni will be eaten.
We go back to IBC and DBSA. It's a very important point in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we need to recognize the economic condition we're in, right? For instance, as an example, the country's recently been downgraded from investment grade status. So the DBSA, and I'm sure it's the same for the IDC as a sub-sovereign, our foreign currency rating is now BB+. We are competing in Africa against the African Development Bank. You know, they're doing a session across the door, they're AAA rated. The Chinese entities, it doesn't really even matter because of the access to extra capital. I mean, underlying all of this is the fact that you've got a country there where the savings rate is 40 to 50% of GDP, right? When you have that much savings, it doesn't really matter what Moody's or S&P says because you have your own money. When you don't have that savings in this country and in this continent, then it matters what Moody's or S&P says. So until and unless we can save enough and put that towards our investments, it's going to be a problem. And you know, the reality is our borrowing costs are such in dollars that we will not be able to provide lending on a non-bankable project. Now, where there's a commercial viability, and I think a lot of the projects, and I think what's great about what Transnet's doing is they're not allowing that to stop themselves either. They're coming up and they're being innovative, they're coming up with products as well. But there will be certain types of projects which may make over a 100-year period sense for that country, but over a 20 to 25-year financing period, they don't make financial sense. And that's going to be a challenge to ask ourselves, as much as we can come and work together, are those projects ones that we can viably compete against? Or are those projects that frankly we're not? I mean, I see, you know, the head of GE Transport here for Africa, I mean, he can probably speak about, I'm sure they're also struggling, you know, in certain parts as well of the continent. Where it's bankable, where it makes sense, they may be able to succeed. In other cases, they're going to struggle, and that's the reality.
It's important that the DFIs also look at their own capital raising mechanisms, and we government owned. So perhaps we were talking that we should perhaps follow the example of the Brazilian DFI in terms of raising competitive funding, because as he says, we can't compete. We also has to be sustainable. So we are looking at it as IDC as to how can we participate and support the rapid industrialization that we want to see, starting with our own way of raising capital.
I'm now going to move from the IDC. We'll start with Rizeko through to Siya. And I think what is important, we had Mohan earlier talking about Kigali and WEF Africa. And we've tracked a number of initiatives on this platform today, subsequent to the WEF on Africa in Kigali 12 months ago. We now, because we will regroup, and we will have this conversation again. It's part of my commitment to pushing the agenda and making sure that we see delivery on promises. So Rizeko, I'm going to start with you in terms of the next 12 months and what you believe will be executed by the time we meet around about the same time next year.
I think as an IDC, we will commit to partner with Transnet, fund one project outside South Africa. That's the commitment now.
Well, there we go. You see, these are tangible. We're not talking time to start. And I've got a memory like an elephant. So there it is, one project in partnership with Transnet outside of the African continent, outside of
South Africa.
Outside of South Africa for the IDC. Mohan.
So specifically in the rail space, I mean, I think one of the elements is we'd like to see the work that the NEPAD Business Foundation is doing on the North-South corridor leading to that $700 million in CapEx, and I think that can happen in the next financial year. The other is we're very close to raising 4 billion rands of capital for the Gautrain Management Agency for the expansion of the rolling stock for the Gautrain. We're also funding the technical studies for the expansion of the Gautrain network. Now that again, you're probably looking at about 50 to 60 billion rands of financing required, and a lot of that is going to have to be done through the government. So I'm not sure if the expansion of the Gautrain network itself, that's a multi-year effort, but certainly the expansion of the the rolling stock for the existing line is another roughly 4 billion rands that we'll be raising in the next financial year.
So I can judge you on the rolling stock for the existing line. We need to be very clear on these objectives.
Yeah.
We'll see if you can push the other element as well. Tammy.
I think it's important that in the next few months we do find a South Africa Inc. solution that matches what the Chinese are able to do. With all the downgrades, with all the challenges we have, I still believe we can do it. We've got all the products that we need. We are currently busy piloting some of the equipment that we want to launch in the maritime space, starting with traffic carriers and road tire entries, rubber tire entries that we want to start manufacturing. Because we believe that we've done our part in industrializing the economy when it comes to rolling stock. We just now are saying we are ready to do business with the rest of the economy.
So you're going to drive that South Africa Inc. initiative under the Transnet umbrella, because remember, I've been told of your pipeline, we know it now, 20 to 20 billion. Can you give me perhaps a number that you can look to closing because of our competitive status?
We're looking at about 3 billion.
Thank you very much for a definitive answer.
I just think from my perspective, we need to do a bit of time compression in terms of decision making as well. Not everything is about money in my view. You know, just to get to decisions, there are too many decision makers, particularly when you begin to talk of corridors. I mean, our trains run from the port of Durban here all the way to Lubumbashi in the DRC. They have to talk to 5-6 different railways to get a quotation or to get a price, you know, to move a commodity. And just simplifying how we do business, you know, as well goes a long way to enabling us to raise the monies we need to deal with infrastructure challenges.
Siya, closing remarks to you, sir.
Since Kigali, I think we've made some meaningful progress in a number of countries. One of my colleagues that I was talking to was telling me that he bought a flat in Lagos, which I think is good. Or he's renting a flat in Lagos. So there is something that we're doing, and I see one of our core partners, GE, in a project that we hope to finalize there very soon. Also, we've been in Senegal. I think there's some good progress in Togo. There's some good progress that is taking place. Also on the ports front in Kenya, as well as in Liberia. There are some projects that are being developed.
Thank you so much for your insights, for your depth of analysis, and we still have today and tomorrow at the World Economic Forum, so let's make these discussions count and look to measure, monitor, and hold accountable for promises made. Thank you so much for joining us for this conference.